Welcome and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. I'm joined along with Devin DeCuna, who's a wonderful intern out of Northeast Illinois, and he's going to be joining us to talk about the wonderful culture of suburbia and permaculture. First, I'd like to welcome Jan Spencer to the Beyond 50 radio program, who's going to be sharing with us what suburban permaculture is. Jan, thank you for joining us here on the program today.
Well, thanks for having me, Daniel. It's good to be here.
You bet. Now, first of all, talk about exactly what permaculture is.
Permaculture, short story, permaculture was popularized by a couple of gentlemen from Australia, David Holmgren and another, I forgot his name, I'll remember that. But permaculture essentially is kind of giving an identity to knowledge that's ancient knowledge. Basically, it's common sense kind of knowledge of how to take care of our needs in ways that are more local, more human scale, and particularly considering the trends of our times, more appropriate than a globalized market economy. So it's food, it's social systems, it's economics. It's a set of principles that can be applied to a scale from the backyard to the bioregion.
Oh, very good. Devin, what are your thoughts on permaculture? Any experience?
Hey, Jen, Devin DeCuna here. This is very new to me, suburban permaculture, but after reading up on what you did, it was very interesting. And what I wanted to talk about is the changes you've made to your home. And I was looking at some pictures of the house earlier, and it looks like almost like a greenhouse to me. So if you could, Jen, could you explain to our listeners the kinds of changes you made to your home?
Yeah, that's a good question. And Bill Mollison is one of the founders of the idea of permaculture. Sorry, Bill. So what I've done to my place, well, I bought this property 11 years ago here in Eugene, and my intention from the beginning was to do a major remake, and for lots of different reasons, for environmental reasons, for political reasons. It's fun, but it's also a timely thing to do given the condition of our world and society. So the property is a quarter acre, and it's a better than average quarter acre. The soil's good, of course. The climate here in the Northwest, the Willamette Valley, is a wonderful climate for food production. So it's a mid-50s house. It's kind of a small ranch-style house, and it had some positive, attractive attributes from the beginning. The backyard's on the south side of the house. Surprisingly, Devin, as you maybe alluded to, the house actually had a sunroom when I moved in. Mm-hmm. So when you say the south side of the house kind of looks like a greenhouse, well, a sunroom, of course, is close relative of the greenhouse, has concrete floor. But the first things I did when I moved in were to sheet mulch the grass, getting rid of the grass, putting down cardboard, organic material on top of the cardboard, basically to suffocate the grass. And that went on from October to March. There's other ways to get rid of the grass. This is just the way I did it. And I planted, fruit trees, brambles. There's edible landscaping all over the place. I did remove several trees that just didn't fit into the plan. So this is after 11 years, and it's gratifying, it's fun, it's a lot of work. And the place has become a community education resource. I give tours, do occasional workshops. People are interested, as we're having this conversation right now, in making better use of what's already here. There's lots of suburbia in the United States. and I wouldn't say that all of it has the kind of potential that this property has or what we have in much of the Willamette Valley, but there's enormous social, infrastructure, human types of assets that this type of transformation can go on in lots of different places.
Now, if you can, Jan, describe what suburbia actually is, what a suburban neighborhood is.
Great question. That could be an entire interview right there.
Yeah, we'll just keep it in a nutshell, because I remember, years ago back in the 80s, there was a movie called The Burbs, and I'm like, okay, what's this? But it was about a particular area of living. But describe what a suburban neighborhood looks like. How close are the houses in proximity, yard sizes, things like that.
Sure. Well, suburbia can take in a variety of sort of size of lots, certainly different geographies, but one of the most characteristic attributes of suburbia is that the people who live there don't work there. They go somewhere else to work.
See. Okay.
And that normally is with an automobile. Given the frequency of the automobile, the common lament is we don't have a population density that can support public transportation. And in a mainstream assessment, that's probably true. But the cost of gasoline is just tremendously underpriced. If we really paid the true cost of the extraction and the refining and the use of gasoline, it would cost lots more than it does. So suburbia essentially receives immense subsidies, not in terms of so much as a federal subsidy, but the externalized costs of supporting suburbia in terms of energy and resources is just enormous. So that's probably one of the most common characteristics of suburbia. It's automobile dependent, and generally the things that people need are not so accessible just by walking or a bicycle.
Oh, I see. Okay, great. So you can see how something like this would actually be effective in reducing, for instance, your trips to, let's say, the supermarket.
Sure. I grow a good deal of food here on site, and I certainly realize not everybody has the time to do what I'm doing here. I've made choices in my own lifestyle to allow me to do this, and that's not what everybody would do. But I'm also taking a look at the trends of our time, of the cost of energy going up, it's global relations, where is that energy that we need and what do we need to get our hands on it. You can take a look at foreign policy doctrine of the United States, and it's all about oil. So with making these kinds of changes, I'm able to take care of more of my needs here on site. I catch rainwater. I have a 6,500-gallon rainwater system, and that essentially puts me off the grid for rainwater. Mm-hmm. Solar energy, it's remarkable how effective solar energy is here in the Northwest. I'm amazed. I grow a good deal of my own food. One of the best lessons of doing this for me has been that it connects me more to what it takes to satisfy some of my needs right here on site. Mm-hmm. And in our globalized economy and way of life, you can make a phone call or you can buy a product, and unless you read the fine print, you don't even know what continent you're on. And this is disturbing because it's hard to make responsible choices when we don't know the information about what we're choosing. Mm-hmm. So this kind of a lifestyle taking care of more needs on site right here, makes me appreciate a lot more some of the basic things that I need in terms of I want to be comfortable, I want to be warm and dry, I want to have good food to eat. But if you can imagine, a single property is really great, but if your neighbors start doing this kind of thing,
right,
if you're starting to take down fences, if you're starting to form mutual assistance kinds of groups, you move in an economic scale from the home into the neighborhood, and that's really exciting. And I know a bit of that's going on here in my neighborhood, and I know other places in Portland and Davis, California. There are suburban pioneers who are doing exactly that. You know, they're taking the scale of economics from a home scale more into a neighborhood scale for taking care of even more kinds of needs. Mm-hmm. And this is really exciting. I can't think of a more exciting kind of a movement to be a part of, because when you think of the climate change and you think of the peak oil, you think of an economy that is unraveling as we speak. This economy is not built to last. It's just common sense to localize in the sort of nomenclature of this kind of movement, localizing and downsizing. It's just good old-fashioned voluntary simplicity and meeting our neighbors and collaborating with people who are nearby and making good use of the social and physical attributes of where we live.
Right. Devin, any thoughts?
You know, Jane, one of the things I think is pretty cool about is that your home has gained a lot of positive feedback. You know, I understand tours, classes, media, out-of-town visitors, and curious neighbors have paid a visit to your home, and, you know, that's got to be pretty exciting for you.
Oh, sure it is. I love to do show and tell. I love doing this right now. This is great, and I appreciate it. And I think that more and more people are going to be casting about, wondering, what do I do? I've lost my job, and we're just on the outer fringes, you know, of this emerging situation, and more people are going to wonder, how can I take care of my needs in a way that's more ethical, that's more environmentally responsible, and with an economy that is on the downslope. And it's wonderful to share this kind of information. And we had a permaculture event near Portland a couple weeks ago, and there were about 500 people there. And it was so nice. This is a movement. It's not a big movement, but it's a growing movement of more and more people in one way or another coming to the realization that we just can't keep doing what we've been doing for the last 50 years, for the entire lives of us baby boomers. We just can't keep doing this. It's wrecking the planet, and it's not even good for our own spirit and social and human potential well-being. There's alternatives, and my place here is just a small little part of this movement, and it's exciting.
And you know, Jane, since you've made the transformation, have you noticed any trends within your community? Like, have you seen any neighbors try to modify their homes to make it more?
Oh, this is happening within a 5-minute walk of my house. There's at least a half dozen other houses doing this kind of stuff.
Oh, I see.
And we are collaborate with each other. We can do more, and we will do more. We're just at the beginning. I would not at all point to what's happening in my little part of the neighborhood. This is the complete model. It's an adventure for us. It's an adventure for me. But I know other people around Eugene who are doing this. I know people in Portland who are doing this, in Seattle, Corvallis, Olympia, Bellingham. These are a few of the towns I know of particularly where there's transition town movements. You know what transition towns are? There's permaculture guilds. There are people actively involved in doing this kind of transformation.
Fascinating stuff.
And also, I was just curious, how long did this process take of making the transformation to your home? Because I see here it's 6,500-gallon rainwater storage in 3 tanks. You took out all your grass. The solar remodel and a new solar. I mean, it sounds like it took a really long time to get this process complete.
You're right. Well, I started out here 11 years ago, and my own particular lifestyle allows me to put a lot of time into doing this because it's fun, and these are just choices I've made in my lifestyle. It's not like I have a ton of money in the bank and I don't have to worry about that. I'm living with my choices. But these kinds of projects do take time, and I have some skills. Some of the things I've done, a lot of the things I've done, I've called up people and said, how do I do this? Because I've never put together a rainwater system like this before. And my construction skills, they're a lot more than they were, but I ask questions for friends of mine who know about these things. When I built the bungalow, and I helped another friend of mine rebuild the sunroom, I've had a permaculture intensive course years ago when I lived in Texas, so I had that kind of knowledge. So a lot of this is just finding out, what do I do? I didn't wait until I had a precise plan before I started doing this, but I had a real good idea of what I wanted to do when I started this. And here's another really important something that I learned that applies to our changing times. I've done most of the work on my property mostly by myself. I've paid some people to do some things that I didn't know how to do, and I bought materials. Certainly I don't have a forest here. I can't mill my own wood. As you can see on my website, www.suburbanpermaculture.org, I've got lots and lots of pictures of this, lots of pictures of when I started, 5 years later, 8 years later, 11 years later. I've got lots of pictures that show all these different aspects of what I've done. It's almost like a how-to. And I also have these wonderful posters that I sell that show a lot of this as well, available on my website. But when I look at what's happened here, and I look at what other people who are doing similar kinds of projects, the number of people I know doing this is in the realm of dozens, and that's not very many. But when you consider the expanse of suburbia all over the country, if transforming suburbia, if transforming a suburban property became more widely accepted, more widely known, more widely practiced, the economic potential of doing these kinds of edible landscaping, of rainwater systems, of solar design, of all these different kinds of elements that go into this sort of transformation, this represents just an unimaginable amount of economic activity, of jobs for people to do this kind of work. Because not everybody knows how, or not everybody's got the time to do these things like I do. But if you can imagine, hopefully, this already coming a little more into focus, but say 5, 8 years from now, or even less, your general contractor, when you're going to do a house, is going to have permaculture knowledge. Just like a general contractor now knows who does the concrete and who does the foundation and who does the roofing and all of that stuff. The new general contractor is going to know who does the edible landscaping, who knows how to take out concrete, who knows how to set up a rainwater system and do passive solar design or retrofit. And this is really exciting because the money and time I put into my place multiplied by thousands and thousands, and you're talking about ultimately billions of dollars worth of transforming suburbia, and then the benefits of that are just off the charts to the environment, to civics, to public health, to our well-being and peace on earth. The benefits of doing this are just totally off the charts.
You know, I was going to mention we actually had produced a YouTube video on Fukuoka, who did a permaculture in Japan. Are you familiar with him?
The One Straw Revolution?
Exactly, that's exactly what
I'm not familiar, but I'm aware a little bit.
Well, he designed, he was I'm trying to think, agricultural engineer is what he was, and it was one time he stepped out on his porch, had that Zen moment, and realized, nature is perfect the way it is. So he got into what was known as basically non-work farming, even though there's work involved, but more or less, nature begins to kind of do what it has always done on its own. And it's amazing because he started then growing organic yields of rice that were outpacing the other rice growers around the area who were using things like fertilizers and pesticides, just by kind of just letting nature do what it's supposed to do, what it does naturally. And as a result, his yields were much greater, and of course it was organic, and he also had the philosophy of, because it's organic now, it must be sold cheaper because it takes really less money to grow things. And I find it astounding when we take a look at what you're talking about here, how you can grow, pretty much your own food, and that if people started doing this more and more, that you look at these organic stores that are out there, and food is a lot more expensive just because they put an organic, sustainable label on that. How do you address something like that?
Yeah, well, for one, I'm a long, long ways from producing all my own food here, and actually that's not even a realistic goal. But for fruit and vegetables, I rarely buy fruit and vegetables. But I eat a lot more than fruit and vegetables. But the property transformation needs to be seen in a context of a larger kind of a mix of approaches to going local and green. So, for example, what I mean by that is, here in the southern Willamette Valley, it's just marvelous agricultural country here in the Willamette Valley. But a lot of the crops aren't even food crops. Grass seed is a big deal in the southern Willamette Valley. Well, in the last few years, the grass seed market is not what it was. And a lot of those farmers are looking at alternatives. This is funny. The alternative becomes food. There's actually an organization called the Willamette Grain and Bean Project, and it's composed of people in Eugene and Corvallis and likely other towns around the southern Willamette Valley. And the purpose of this group is to educate and encourage farmers to transition back to growing wheat and beans. And this is fascinating, and this is already happening. There's a new flour mill in Eugene. It's not just growing food that we need to do, and this gets back to the economy. When we start to think about producing more of our more complex kind of foods, like I don't have room here to grow wheat on my property, but 3 miles north of here, there's plenty of room to grow wheat. But to set up, or actually to recreate what we've lost, recreate a system of both production and processing and storage and distribution of local meaning the Willamette Valley, the Northwest. This adds far more to our security and our safety and our local economies by sort of reconnecting with many of the kinds of economies in and the agricultural activities that went on here 50, 60, 80 years ago. It's sort of a back into the future. And if we can apply the science and the knowledge that we have now to some of the wisdom of the past, that just makes a lot of sense to me. If we can be smarter about how we use technology, I think we're going to be a lot happier, and it's going to be a lot more peaceful of a world. But my place, what this single property is, fits into a larger kind of a matrix, and it gets into urban planning so we can redesign our cities so we don't have to use cars nearly so much. It gets into a sort of a value system and an ethical system that we can use and we can call on to help make smart decisions in the first place. If you can kind of tune into that, what if uplifted, happy people, cooperation, care for nature, care for our neighbors, human uplift, in a spiritual sense, what if those were the guiding features, of our culture, and we actually had an economy that served that kind of a culture? Wow. That's where I want to be, and that's what we're working on, and that's happening too. Is it going to be enough? Who knows? But that's, in my opinion, the core of what this is about. It's just not, I've got a really nice permaculture property here. This fits into a much larger scheme of politics, of economy, of culture, of asking the fundamental question, what are we here for in the first place?
Right. Fascinating stuff. Now, Jan, go ahead and give out your website again for our listeners.
Sure. My website is www.suburbanpermaculture.org, and that's just one long, kind of a German-like word, suburbanpermaculture.org. And I have lots of photos, some text. I have some links to other media items. I mentioned I designed 3 posters, educational color posters that are wonderful for meetings, to give as gifts for schools, and as a help for others, to make use of knowledge I've gained, by doing this.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating stuff. Any final thoughts, Devin?
This was a really great learning experience. From looking at all the photos, from visiting Jan's website, this is a pretty cool movement you got going on, Jan. So, this was awesome to have you on the show today.
Yeah. Thanks, Devin.
Jan Spencer, again, thank you for joining us again. One more time on your website.
www.suburbanpermaculture.org.
Jan Spencer, thank you again for joining us here on the program.
Thanks, Daniel, and thanks, Devin.
We want to thank you, the listeners out there, for tuning in. This is the Beyond 50 Radio program. Be sure to visit us at our website, which is beyond50radio.com. That's the number 50. Sign up for our free weekly e-newsletter. Also be sure to visit us at our blog. We'll have a nice little archive of this for you to use and share with others. I'm Daniel Davis, along with Devin DeCuna. Thank you for tuning in, and remember, live your day past halfway.